Look, folks, Oscar season's great, but we've got some January movies to talk about. The month that's not usually the best, but you know what? There were some diamonds in the rough. Let's discuss. What's up, Flick fans? I saw 13 new releases in January, a couple of films that I really wanted to get to, like Dogman or One of Them Days, which I cannot wait to see. So I'll get to them, log them on Letterboxd. Speaking of Letterboxd, if you want to go check out my 2025 list, drop a like, leave some comments, that would be awesome. But I need to know on this video, what movie did I miss? What is your ranking? And what is the definitive best movie of January? Let's get started. By the way, a few of these movies I didn't do reviews for. I'm going to do short reviews over on the Burke Reacts YouTube channel. We may start doing more shorts on that channel, so if you want to go check it out, that would be awesome. Some cool content to come, live streams eventually. But right now we're here. We got to stay focused, and we're focusing on the two movies that I actually saw last year, but I put them on my January list, wanted to get off to a hot start. Wallace and Gromit is the first. Vengeance is foul. And we've got our, hey, by the way.
Feathers McGraw, you have been found guilty of the attempted robbery of the Blue Diamond.
Our villain in Feathers McGraw. Arden sent me this. I thought it was such a sweet gift. I have always liked the Wallace and Gromit films, and this is one of those entries that once again just proves that they put so much craft and effort and passion and heart into their projects on a consistent basis to where it's really hard to dislike one of these movies. Like, you may not be into the story, you may not be as interested here or there, but once again, Vengeance Most Foul has all of those elements. The big bad returning from years and years back, that's pretty cool, so that's a draw. There's also like a subplot in the AI world utilizing technology, which these movies often do, but it provides some or more fun entertainment, getting to spend time with these characters. Wallace and Gromit, their dynamic, their relationship, keeping each other in check, if you will. I will say this specific story I wasn't as into as maybe our previous entry, and Feathers McGraw didn't quite get the fleshing out that maybe I needed, and so not the perfect Wallace and Gromit sequel, but another rock solid, just really good overall entry, and I'm not mad that it got some Oscar love, so I'm going to put this one in the good tier.
Me with the floor show, kicking with your torso. Boys getting high and the girls even more so. Wave your hands if you're not with a man. Can I kick it?
Next up, we've got Better Man. Now, say what you will about Robbie Williams, and I had nothing to say because I didn't know who this guy was, to be honest with you. I mean, people were getting so mad. They're like, "You Americans, how dare you?" And I'm sitting here going, "What? It's not my fault. I didn't know. Nobody told me. It's your fault.
How dare you?"
Look, we've got bluegrass and country in Kentucky, and I don't even favor those genres, so what do I love? Apparently nothing. What I did love, surprisingly, was Better Man. I didn't know anything about Robbie Williams again, so this isn't just a movie for the fans, because I'm not a fan, or at least I wasn't. Now that I know a little bit about him, I got interested. I looked him up. I looked up the old rock DJ sequences, and to compare and contrast that to the new one, it's still really impressive because, man, this rock DJ sequence is one of the coolest musical numbers of the decade. This movie is so solidly directed from our director of The Greatest Showman, and overall, the decision to make him a CGI chimpanzee, while still a bit odd, I don't get the backlash. I don't get the arguing online. It's just a stupid thing to argue over because it's like, who cares, really? Thought it looked strange, the trailer was average, and it surprised me big time. And so I'm glad I went and saw this. Again, the musical biopic is something that you have to really try hard to screw up or not try at all. But Better Man actually, slightly reinvented the wheel with certain ideas, and it gave you like an emotional gut punch towards the end. Great dynamic, or a bad dynamic with his father, but it serves the movie well. It shows the path that he goes down, how he regrets certain things, and I was really interested in this story. So, man, to my surprise, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Better Man goes on the great tier. What is happening?
Welcome home, Cuddlebug.
Hey, Dad.
Who's in the house?
Daddy's in the house.
Big Papa's in the house.
Woo!
Tell them I'll be there in 3 minutes.
All right, you're cordially invited. Again, just came out on Prime. This is one of the shorts I'm going to do on the Burke Reacts YouTube channel. I just didn't like this movie, man. And it's so weird because 5-10 years ago, I was all about the over-the-top, schlocky, and ridiculous comedy. And even in the mid-2000s, man, you were getting movies like Talladega Nights and The Other Guys and Step Brothers. And Will Ferrell is so over-the-top in all of those films, but it works because usually the script is rock solid and the direction is rock solid. I thought the direction would be better here because Nicholas Stoller directed Bros and Neighbors and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Now, he also did movies like Get Him to the Greek and Neighbors 2 and Storks, which is really random, but that is the kind of combination you're looking for when you want an over-the-top comedy that works. But this one didn't work. And yes, Will Ferrell is still over the top, but it's the circumstances, it's how ridiculous this movie gets, yet it's not making you laugh. Like, if I'm laughing during a stupid comedy, I think of one a couple of years ago, Tag, the premise, or how they executed the premise, ended up getting really dumb, but I had a good time with it because I was laughing, right? You're not laughing with your Cordially Invited. Reese Witherspoon is really good at what she does. She's not really all that funny in this film. And circumstantially, what they get themselves into, no, I couldn't buy it. But even then, if you're not buying it, and you're not laughing, and you don't really like any of the characters, most everyone in this film is unlikable. Like, regardless of the circumstances or the family dynamic, you just don't know who to root for. Am I supposed to root for one wedding or the other? And everything that they're getting themselves into, like the alligator and the deck collapsing, just so many moments where I'm like, I think I was supposed to laugh there. And it sucks, because Will Ferrell used to do this and nail it. I just don't think he's been teaming up with the right people involved. You would have thought this was the right director, but I guess not. So you're Cordially Invited. I was going invited on the bad tier.
Places, please. Places, please.
Okay, so I was really excited for The Last Showgirl. Awards love across the board with this movie. Pamela Anderson, Jamie Lee Curtis. I thought Jamie Lee would get in for the Oscar. She didn't. And, you know, after watching it, kind of sitting on it, I'm not going to say I'm glad she didn't, but I definitely think the 5 that got in deserve it over her. Really, for me, it's Pamela Anderson who gives the standout performance, and I think they are rocking it in every way with the cast. Dave Bautista, Kiernan Shipka, Brenda Song. I like the supporting roles, and in the beginning, when Dave Bautista comes and tells everyone here that this show is being canceled, the one that's run for how many years now in your entire life, is about to change, and it's Pamela Anderson's character coming to terms with that and realizing that, you know, she has to cope with the fact that she doesn't feel wanted anymore. She doesn't understand her role in life, and that is an emotional story that does grab you in the beginning when they get that news, and the path from then on does become somewhat repetitive. And this movie was very repetitive, from Anderson's character walking the Las Vegas Strip to kind of the look, the faded off, and I understand the decision-making behind the filmmaking style, but it does it almost hurt my eyes at points while I was watching the movie. Like, I get it, but at the same time, I don't love the decision to keep that prominent. And so, some things about the filmmaking that I didn't love, some things about the pacing that I didn't love, and ultimately, I didn't feel satisfied by the end of this movie. It ended, and I said, okay, all right. But, you know, you have to look at these performances and say they are good enough to keep this movie elevated, at least for people to appreciate it for awards purposes. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, the movie in its entirety was kind of a forgettable and meh experience with really good intentions. So I just realized the okay and the meh tier flipped on me. So there we go. We're back.
Why do you wrestle? When people look at me, the first thing they see is what's missing.
Now we've got Unstoppable. On its surface, Unstoppable felt very generic, just kind of approaching this as a straight-to-streaming Amazon Prime movie, a feel-good story, a sports story, which, granted, I'm a sucker for, and one with Jennifer Lopez, who sucked in Atlas last year, but all right, I'm going to give her a chance to succeed. She's actually pretty good here. Michael Pena's good. Don Cheadle's good. Bobby Cannavale is very unlikable, but good. And our lead, Jarrell Jerome, playing Anthony Robles, is actually fantastic. Like, I bought his will, I bought his intentions, I bought the struggle that he's going through physically. He's a wrestler, and this is a true story, right? So it's a wrestler who was really good at what he did, but he only had one leg. So obviously that's a major obstacle to overcome, but he's also overcoming some stuff at home, his family life, his situation, what's going on with his mom, and the man in the house, Bobby Cannavale's character, running around just doing things that you don't want to see happen in a family that big. So you get all of those cliches, and I think the difference between this and something like Warrior is Warrior has that style to it. It has a better script. And something with a bit less cheese, there's cheese there obviously, but the cheesy lines in Unstoppable, Jennifer Lopez in the stands getting on to people in the crowd saying stuff about her son, it all feels very over the top and unrealistic, ungrounded. But the story as a whole is grounded. It's interesting to watch, and ultimately I did feel something by the end. I think this movie does a good job at honing in that cheese when it needs to and delivering an emotional story. And this is an experience on streaming that I would actually say is worth a watch. If you're interested in this great, amazing true story, first of all, you want to make a movie about something like this. He deserves it. And I remember hearing that this was one of the very first Nike athletes to become a Nike athlete after he retired from the sport. And so to see this journey play out on screen was really cool. Not the best movie ever, but I'm definitely going to say it is okay. And a lot of people will say this one's pretty good.
Dad, can we please get something to eat?
Yeah, look, right up here. You guys run in, grab some snacks, right? In and out. Bring my change back.
All right, back in action. Cameron Diaz, Jamie Foxx. She's back in action. She's unretired. Hasn't been in a movie in like 10 plus years. And so I was excited to see that. But then I saw that this was a Netflix action movie, and I thought of the numerous Kevin Hart films over the last couple of years. What was the Mark Wahlberg? Was it Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry? Mile 22, that Michael Bay one that came out a couple of years ago. It's just like all of these Netflix action movies are the same, and Back in Action is the same. It's two prominent, notable actors. They're trying to riff off of each other. The chemistry's fine. The story's not very good. The villains are generic. Glenn Close is in here, so she does kind of elevate that. But once you meet her, it's just like, man, the things these people are saying to each other, it feels like AI is writing this script at points, and I hate to say it like that. Now, what I'll give it kudos for, okay, because I'm being kind of mean, is I did like the family dynamic. I do like that the kids are getting involved. I really enjoy that Spy Kids element to it. Not that they're fighting crime, but just the family dynamic in the midst of madness is really cool to me. And that was the part of the movie that I was on board with. They're older now. They're having to raise their kids, but they're getting sucked back in the game. That part worked for me. The rest of the film, from the action to the madness to the silliness, I'm just like, yeah, it's another run-of-the-mill thing. Not awful like other action movies on streaming, but I am going to say it goes on the bad tier.
It's not about the money.
All right, Den of Thieves 2, Pantera, Gerard Butler, O'Shea Jackson Jr. I am a big fan of the first Den of Thieves. Yes, it's a Heat ripoff. Oh my God, how many times have I heard that? It's just like people run out of things to say about these movies that feel like other movies. I get it. It's a Heat. I get it. Joker feels like Taxi Driver. So lazy.
All right, I get it!
It's true, don't get me wrong, but that can't be your main criticism. Like, we have to look at what this movie actually is, because movies copy movies all the time. It's all about execution, not the fact that you're trying to do the same thing. And so I thought the first Den of Thieves was executed well. This one was executed well. This one is not an action movie. It's a heist movie with like an hour and 20 minutes of buildup. And that tested my patience while I was watching. Don't get me wrong. I like Gerard Butler in this role. I think he's great. It's honestly a little more grounded over the first hour than the first movie, but I was missing that action. I also was just kind of waiting on it to pick up. And when they're out doing their own thing and they're getting kicked out of bars and just felt like a bit of a slog, like we were just moving so slow to get to the next scene. And not that any of it's bad. I do think there are some moments that are well written, but there are other moments where the pacing while the movie's going, it just feels so off because everything's moving so slow. Ultimately, when you get to the heist, it's kind of interesting, but it wasn't nearly as fun as the first movie and the climax there. And so, ultimately, I was disappointed by Pantera. I wanted a lot more out of it. Still got to give the movie kudos for being high quality, but I have to go meh tier because it didn't work.
I never flew U.S. Marshal before. Hope you like flying.
Beautiful day for it.
Flight Risk. Oh boy. This is a Mel Gibson movie. It's Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg. He's flying a plane, he's shaving his head, he's going bald, he's doing what he needs to do for the role, and Austin's sitting here just not liking the movie. What's wrong with him? Topher Grace, Michelle Dockery. Topher Grace is doing his best Ryan Reynolds impersonation in this film. It caught me off guard at the beginning of this movie because it's like trying to be silly. It's so silly. I'm like, oh, this is silly. Why is this silly? This is a Mel Gibson movie? Like, what is going on here? Totally incoherent at times. Even those really intense moments on the plane when there's this added pressure to survive. She's talking on the phone to somebody and he's hitting on her, like asking her out to dinner. She's trying to survive and he's just like, hey, you want to go to dinner? And I get trying to add some levity to that moment, but man, it was so ridiculous. And then Mark Wahlberg's over there like, I'm going to pull your liver out and eat it for dinner. And I'm just like, what is this dialogue? This was not Mel Gibson. It didn't feel like Mel Gibson. Again, to use this very lazy criticism, because that's what I'm all about today, it felt at times like it was written by AI. Maybe it's the writer, Jared Rosenberg, who has written one movie, and that's Flight Risk. That's a good cover-up, AI. Guess I liked the claustrophobic feel, and some of the moments were pretty entertaining, admittedly. But this is a turn-your-brain-off, dumb, stupid movie that I couldn't believe was bad. And I get people putting it lower, but hey, it's Mark Wahlberg. What do you want me to say?
Late one night, when everyone was in bed, there was a knock at the door.
The Damned, directed by Thorder Paulson. This feels like an eternity ago. This was like the first movie I watched in January. It's been a long month. Is January the longest month of the year? My God. What I liked about this movie is the atmosphere, the aesthetic, and the fact that it sucked me in and really felt like Robert Eggers-ish while I was watching, which is really cool, man. And I love that they're utilizing the location and making it feel just off while you're watching. That's super cool. And this plot was interesting. The ship sinks, there are survivors, but it's like if we give them our food, then we're going to starve. But it ultimately turns into something a little more demonic and horrifying. I really liked the feeling that you were getting while watching this, the slow buildup that was admittedly too slow at times, to something that will not work for a lot of people. And I don't even think I liked the conclusion, to be honest with you. But The Damned was more a movie about the journey and just kind of how it made me feel, how it felt like those A24 films of old while you're watching that I appreciate. And it had this The Witch vibe, obviously in a very different Icelandic setting and location. But I enjoyed the experience. Now, there were clear issues. They did not fully bring it home and capitalize, but ultimately I ended up enjoying this way more than some other movies I saw in January. And so I'm going to put this on the okay tier. I would check this one out.
Wakey, wakey. Peekaboo.
How did you get down there?
I'm Peter.
Sorry. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, directed by Scott Chambers. This is in the Pooniverse. We got ourselves another entry into the Pooniverse. It's a good time to be living.
Stop it. Get some help.
And Scott Chambers, Christopher Robin in this universe. That's pretty cool. Look, it has some things in there that you could really respond to and appreciate as a hardcore horror lover. The kills, the creep factor of Peter Pan, very reminiscent to, they're literal scenes where you could go, that's It the Clown, except it's Peter Pan. But Peter Pan's always been a character that you could make creepy. You know what I mean? Like the story. If you tweaked it a couple of ways, it could ultimately turn into an R-rated horror movie. And that's what they try to do here. But I felt so many, like as I was watching, making comparisons, like this is it. This is a typical slasher. This was done better by Art the Clown numerous times last year. You know what I mean? And there was nothing about this slasher movie that stood out as different, unique, something I haven't seen before. I've ultimately seen everything in here. But if executed well, that could be a good thing. Unfortunately, I just don't think the direction had the pacing necessary to keep this movie afloat while you were watching. Didn't really care that much about the characters. Wendy, they try to get you into her, but maybe they even spend too much time on Wendy, and you're like, where's Peter Pan? Where's the murders? And I don't want to see him do that to children, but at least those scenes were somewhat entertaining. They commit to the bit. which I appreciate, but Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, while so much better than the first Blood and Honey, does feel like it's in that universe. I don't think that's a good thing, so we're going to put it on the bad tier, but at least it's not awful.
What's it like?
Presents. I love presents. No, presents. The other way to spell the word. Directed by Steven Soderbergh. This was, I was into it. I was into the idea. We saw one last year in A Violent Nature, which was the perspective of the slasher. This time we're getting the perspective of the ghost that's haunting this family in this house. And it reminded me of like a mixture of Here combined with a ghost story. And when I say Here, we're just living with this family. We are in their lives, watching them, but like a ghost story, we're seeing it from the perspective of the ghost. But also like a ghost story, this movie isn't scary. This is a horror movie that's not really a horror movie. I guess you could put it in a subgenre of horror, but I don't even know if I would do that. It's masking itself as something different, more of a drama. A drama that admittedly has an emotional kick by the end. Some of the dialogue here doesn't work. There's one character that comes in. He's kind of a not the best guy, and he'll say some things, and I'm just like, I get it's supposed to be over the top, but it's really like this is a very grounded premise, supernatural grounded premise, but you're making it feel like it's not very good acting. The ending of this film does shine a new light on the experience as a whole, one where you could go back and watch certain things happen and say, oh, that's what they were intending on doing. So I like when a movie does that. It lands the plane, but man, was it a bumpy ride. At times, a slow. We're talking like a 12-hour trip to Hawaii plane ride, okay? You're taking forever. You're squished between a couple of people, and once you get there, you're happy. You're pumped. Like, okay, we're here. We made it. Let's go. But the experience getting there, like, you had a lot of turbulence on the way, okay? So I really wanted to like this more. Soderbergh's direction is rock solid, but there were moments that I would have tweaked. The pacing doesn't quite work for me. Yes, it's 90 minutes. Pacing still doesn't work for me. But hey, I respect it, appreciate the attempt. I'm going okay tier.
There have been two moments in my life when I was happiest. The first was the day I met Josh.
I'm Josh.
I'm Iris.
How about Companion? I just talked about this on the channel, so you can go check out that full review. I will not spoil anything like one of those trailers does. For those that say the poster spoils anything, you would not know that unless you have seen the trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer, you will not look at that poster and say, well, that's obviously what that is. How would you know that? You wouldn't know that. Look, it's Sophie Thatcher's world. We're all just living in it. She's amazing in this film. She was great in Heretic last year, but she's so good, like embodying and capturing exactly what she needs to for her very different, very unique character. And this story, one that tackles abuse and toxicity and relationships, but takes us the extra mile, injects a little bit of humor in there. You could say, you know where this is going. You would be lying to me, unless you're ultimately talking about the ending, because the ending is the part of the film where I'm like, yeah, then it starts to become a little more generic. So I get that. I also get the people complaining about exposition, because there is quite a bit of exposition in this film. But without those moments, I would have probably been like, I could have used that. And so I'm just going to complain either way, because nothing makes me happy except for Sophie Thatcher. Don't tell my wife. I love you, honey. Talking specifically about this movie, she is so good. So good. Jack Quaid works really well. And this is just a cool psychological thriller, man, with a little bit of a slasher feel. If you want to call it horror, sure. Way less that, more of a thriller. But ultimately, I had a great time. It's a similar feeling to what I got as Strange Darling last year, where both of these movies came out of nowhere, told a generic story, but each told it in a very different, very unique, very entertaining way. And so I'm going to put Companion on the great tier. I will link my full review down below. Listen to me rave.
Run.
This is my biggest disappointment of the year, because I wanted Wolfman to be great. I'm sorry, Wolfman, more like someone that slightly resembles a dog, a half human, half dog man. He's like partially there to reaching Chewbacca status, but never quite gets there. Okay, the effects are good. The makeup is good. I do not like the design of Wolfman Man in this movie. I also don't really like where we end up, but more so how we get there. Like, Austin, this movie is focused on the transformation, how he is just getting pulled away from reality. He's seeing his family slowly slip away, and I get that. And that's a cool way to tell this story. But first of all, if you're going to do that, you have to at least make it a little more entertaining as we're going. Also, that is the perfect idea for a short story, 25 minutes. That would have worked extremely well. To make this movie 103 minutes and focus almost entirely on that, with something at the beginning that I thought was a great setup, comes back into play by the end, but ultimately, I wanted so much more there because that was interesting. Like, fill in those gaps and then give me what you're doing, as well as a more exciting payoff. I just never felt that while I was watching this film, and to be honest, Leigh Whannell was lacking what I usually like about Leigh Whannell, and that's the standout feel to it all. Wolfman feels kind of formulaic, like a different idea, but ultimately the movie's formulaic. His other movies, more recent, just they have that, right? Upgrade and The Invisible Man was great. Wolfman isn't. And I wasn't really excited when this movie was over. I'm just like, yeah, that was kind of forgettable. It did not work, man. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm putting Wolfman on the bad tier. I am stunned. So again, if you want to see my best of the decade video soon, be sure to drop that like. We're going to rank these films, but first, get in that comment section, man. And hey, if you want to share this video on your Twitter, on your Instagram, I think that's helping these videos. And so if you guys want to do that, I would appreciate it. If not, I understand. Let's start this list off in the 13th spot with Peter Pan. It just did not come together, unfortunately. Then we have, I cannot believe this, a Mel Gibson movie, This Far Down. What world are we living in? You're Cordially Invited just didn't really work as the comedy it tried to be. Then Back in Action, I will give Wolfman this. It's better than those 4 movies. On the meh tier, I'm going to say Den of Thieves at least had that entertainment factor by the end, so I'm going to say it's a little, ever so slightly above The Last Showgirl. On the okay tier, Presence, actually looks pretty good there, followed by, let's go The Damned and then Unstoppable. I actually had that switched on my Letterboxd list, but I'm going to switch it back. Obviously, Wallace and Gromit sitting there on the good tier all by themselves, and then on the great tier, we have number 2 and number 1. I'm going to say Better Man is not quite as Better Man as Companion. Companion Man, that is the movie of the month, and I guess technically of the year so far, that just really surprised me, man. But if you look at this list, even though January got off to a really good start because I cheated and put Better Man and Wallace and Gromit on it, it's still very lopsided. This feels like a January, and I know that's going to change, especially when I see a movie like One of Them Days, but as of now, I'm just, whoa, what a mediocre January with a lot of bad movies, and a couple like the new Star Trek film that I've heard awful things about, so maybe it gets even worse. But again, what did I miss? I know there are some gems in January. Every January, there's a gem. And are you guys excited for Oscar season? Seems like Emilia Perez is doing great right now. With the controversy, it's madness. So stay tuned to this channel, hit that notification bell, share, like, comment. What else? Find me on MySpace. Okay, bye-bye.